for Europe. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. We do offer PDHs. If you need those, just send an email and we'll get one to you. We're also taking donations for STEM and scholarship programs, and you can see Ken here. All right, next. If you're online, please turn your camera off. Keep your microphone muted. For the people in the room, please silence your cell phone. We had a very loud emergency warning earlier. All of the slides and the recording will be posted to our YouTube channel and on our website. So you'll be able to download those later. I'd like to introduce our post leadership. Brian Osborne, our post president. Would you like to come up here? Tim Conley, our vice president, who's joining us online. Brian Wybrecht, who's grabbing a bite to eat. He'll be here in a moment. Adam Roberts, come on up, camera. Adam Roberts, our post secretary. Chandler Ogden, Nick Irwin, I don't know if you're joining us online. Chris Carloni, I know is online. He's our membership chair. Ken Staley is our VP for STEM scholarship and golf course, or golf tournament coordinator. And then David Ditterer, is he online?
I'm not sure.
Okay, is our awards and streamer.
Yeah, if I can just say one thing.
Yeah.
So the board is made up of volunteers. We like to recycle the board, if I can say recycle. So we were holding elections later in the year. Anybody who's interested in talking to us about taking one of these positions, please contact me. Contact details are on our post website. Like to hear from you. Always looking to bring in new people, new ideas, and swap around jobs within the board for those that are staying on it. Okay. So thanks very much. If you're interested, let me know.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Ruth.
All right. Upcoming program for the Rhine-Main Post. Of course, today we're here to talk about value engineering. Next Tuesday, we're having the cybersecurity workshop. Jason Manning, who's here in the room now, is helped put that together with Ed Nixon from the core headquarters Center of Expertise. Okay. Then in October, on the 28th, we have an international STEM event. More information about that in a moment. November, we haven't selected a date yet. Normally, our meetings are on the fourth Thursday of the month, but the fourth Thursday of November is my birthday. It's also Thanksgiving. And then December, we usually have a Christmas event. That's always a lot of fun. Christmas market, Okay. Other programs in the region right now.
Therese, this is Tim. Can we go back to the program for a second? I just would like to do an extra plug for the cybersecurity workshop. That is going to be a half-a-day workshop on the 16th, and there is an Eventbrite post that you can sign up for. So I just encourage everybody to get online, sign up on the Eventbrite. We do have limited space, currently about 20 spaces still open for that. So if you can, as early as possible, get signed up for that. Also, if you need help getting signed on to Heineberg, it's going to be at the WEC there at Heineberg. And it would be great to see as many people as possible out there to do a half-day workshop with the Center of Excellence on Cyber. Thanks, Reese. Back to you.
Thank you, Tim. So some other programs in the Europe region. Kaiserslautern has a presentation on technology adaptation. Coming up in October. They have a meeting next Thursday. I don't know what the topic is. Adam, do you know?
I think it's
Therese, I'll be presenting on the family housing program on the 18th in Kaiserslautern.
Tim, I was poking fun. I know. It's on the military family housing. Tim Conley will be presenting, and it's off base in Kaiserslautern at Max Gastro. Max Gastro. Italy is going to have their first membership meeting on the 23rd of September. It's going to be in person and virtual. Poland is having their big industry government engagement event in Poznan on the 23rd of October. And then yesterday, the Ukraine field chapter kicked off their first meeting. So you can get more details on all of this in the news flash, the websites, and on LinkedIn. Chris Carloni, over to you.
Thank you, Charisse, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So we as far as membership, we have as of today 188 members, and then 17 new members joined the post in 2025. So we encourage anybody you know that may be interested in joining the Rhein-Main post to apply. It's fairly easy. You can reach out to me for support. So we welcome all, and we thank you all for your support and continue to be engaged 2025 and beyond. As you have seen before, the program is quite healthy and interesting. So if you move to the next slide, please. We're talking about our sustaining companies, so our heroes that also provide a lot of support to our programs and provide a lot of sponsorship for our STEM events. So we want to continue with working with you, and we'll welcome and thank you for all your support. And the next slide shows all the heroes that the 31 members, sustaining members company that we have. So over to you, Charisse.
Okay, next slides. So Ken.
There we go. Good morning and afternoon. Ken Staley, Vice President for STEM Education and Scholarships. Couple updates. So SAME National hosts summer camps, student summer camps every year. Our post was involved in a couple ways this year. Number one, we sponsored a student from Germany to attend, full free of cost. Secondly, I was honored to be one of the 6 mentors at Camp Lejeune this summer. Great experience. Lots of mentors come back year after year. This was my first year doing it. In total, we had 61 students there at Camp Lejeune. Next slide. So update, October 28th, we're going to be hosting a international STEM event here in Europe. We've included Germany, Poland, Ukraine, the UK, Italy, and Spain, actually. Plus a number of nonprofit organizations, STEM organizations in Europe for this event. One of the presenters is listed there from the European Space Agency, and we're in the process of determining who the second presenter will be for that event. So if you're interested, please let me know, and I'll include you in the team's invite for early, that will go out in early October. Next slide. And as always, every year we have our annual fundraising, student fundraising golf event for STEM programs and student scholarships. This occurs typically in May and June. The dates for that is usually determined in January. And as many of you know, we have a theme each year. So more information on that to follow. That's it. Thank you.
As I mentioned, there's a lot of places to get some information. It's on our website. It's on LinkedIn, YouTube channel where this presentation will be posted later. Next. And with that, I'd like to introduce our 2 speakers today. John Eblen on the my far left. He's the District Value Officer at the Europe District, Corps of Engineers. Came to us from New Orleans. Did I say that right, Adam?
New Orleans.
Thank you. All right. And so he's only been here a few months,
15 months.
15 months.
15 months.
That's a few, yeah. And Al Adelgren, he's with Save International. He's the vice president, right?
Yes.
Yeah, vice president of Save International, and he also works for Crawford Consulting, who does a lot of value engineering projects here throughout Europe. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
So as Sharice had said, these slides will be available to everybody. There may be a couple of minor things we're going to do to add, like our emails, which we left those out. So I'm Al, this is John. We're here to talk about value engineering. Why it came up is I've been associated with this post for 10 years, either here or remotely, and this topic has not come up before. So we talked about it and said, yeah, let's do it. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is who we are.
John Eblen, professional landscape architect and value methodology associate with Save International. I'm currently the district value officer for Europe District.
Al Adelgren, I'm a licensed professional engineer in 6 states. I'm a certified value specialist with Save International. I've been doing VE for a while. We'll have more of our bona fides a little later. I'm also the current vice president for Save International and president-elect. So that means I'm going to be sticking around and doing this for a while. So that's a 6-year commitment as a volunteer. That's a long time, but it's not the first time I've volunteered for long durations with Save. So anyways, all right, so let's go to the next one. So formal VE, this is what we're going to cover in the slides. Who we are, what is VE, why perform it, expected results, and so on. We're not going to read the slides to you guys, but we'll touch on part of it because you're going to get the slide. So we're going to tell stories that go along with some of the slides. So let's do this.
Yeah. All right, so who am I? I mean, Sharice kind of went over it a little bit, but I'm going to get into it a little deeper. So last year, I came over here in June, first time in Germany, didn't know what to expect, was excited. In December, I think it was December 24, my wife had left her architecture firm of 28 years, and she was the accountant, and she got antsy. In December, she says, let's get out of here. Where can your job take us? And I said, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. A week later, I got an email from the value program out of OVEX, and I said, look at this. I said, you want to do something completely different? I could get this job in Wiesbaden because of my experience. And she said, yeah, let's do it. And I didn't think she was serious for like 2 weeks. Anyway, she was. And I accepted the job, and the process went really quick. So here I am. So I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, Saints fan. Yeah, we're struggling this year, but every year, recently, post Drew Brees. I live in Slidell, Louisiana. I never thought I'd do that, but 2009 came. That's when I married my wife. How did I meet her? 2005, working at the same architecture firm, same year as Katrina. My house in Gentilly flooded, 11 feet of water. Levee failure, 2 blocks from my house. I actually got on the class action suit with the Corps of Engineers, and then 4 years later, I was working for them. So people were like, what are you doing? I said, oh, just take advantage of opportunities, right? So I wanted to get out of my past career as a landscape architect for 21 years. So I got my landscape architecture degree from LSU. It is the best undergraduate landscape architecture program in the country. It has been in the top 5 ever since I've been in there. And I started take a switch from geology to landscape architecture in 83, from 82 to 83. And I graduated in 1987. 37 years of total experience, 21 years as a professional landscape architect, working for different architecture firms. Came to the Corps in 2009, 16 years with USACE, 9 years in project management, and then 7 years as a district value officer. One of those years is your DVO at Europe District here. So obviously I was the past DVO in New Orleans. I was the acting RVO, the Regional Value Officer, for the last 2 years of that, because the regional value officer let his credentials slip, so I was assigned that role. That was pretty wild experience. And I currently hold a VMA, as I said earlier in the slides. Oh, go back. All right.
Sorry.
So part of who I am is how the hell did I get into VE, right? I was a landscape architect, and then when I got to the Corps, I was a project manager. So as a project manager, I was assigned the Atchafalaya Basin Construction Project in Civil Works, New Orleans District. That was a completely new experience for me. Some of the projects that I inherited, most of running the value engineering, being a project manager with the Atchafalaya Basin, all civil works, it's part of the MRNT project, Mississippi River tributaries. We're doing levee lifts, right, all the time. And some of the features in that project, I had to do VE. So the first one was Sherrington Floodgate. And that was a project that was built in the late 30s, early 40s, and it was deemed ineffective. It was closed in the 80s, and the Corps was looking to replace it. So when I came in 2009, they were still looking to replace the project since like the early 80s. I was told by engineering controls, which is kind of like our tech leads in Europe district, you need to do a VE study. And I said, I don't know what that is. And I was going to be out of town anyway. He says, I'm taking care of it. I'll do it all for you. So my introduction with VE was fund the project, fund the VE study. And then when it was done, the DVO at the time came by my desk and said, here you go. And he dropped off a huge box, 17 bound VE reports, 2 on my desk, and said, enjoy. And he walked away. And I said, what the hell is this? So I pulled one out and I read through it. And I said, this is interesting. So I went to the DVO and I said, what are we doing for all the levee lifts for VE? And he said, nothing. He says, we're doing waivers. And I said, well, is there a better way to do that? Yep, there sure is. It's programmatic approach. And I said, should we do that? Yeah, it's a great idea. So I talked to the MRL people, the Mississippi River levees. So the MRNT project, we did a programmatic VE study in 2015. My first participation in a VE study, I was amazed at the process. I wasn't used to that, but being a landscape architect, I was amazed. So after that, I realized another project that I had, W124 levee lift. So I've been asking for funds every year to build this project, $8 million. When we got that project transferred from St. Louis District back to New Orleans District, I got a revised cost estimate, $24 million. I freaked out. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I said to Frank Vicidamina, the VE DVO at the time, and I said, I want to do a VE study on this project. I got to find out what the hell's going on. What it worked out is it's $17 million worth of rock to stabilize the riverbank. You can't lift the levee if the bank is unstable. So the VE study focused on ways to do that. After that study, the project itself was broken into 124A, 124B. And then there were ways to bring the costs down. And it improved the value of that whole project. Because of that interest and my passion, I was offered the assistant DVO position in 2016. And I got introduced to it right away with training, the prospect class, the VMF1, the value management course, all of this in Huntsville, Alabama. I didn't know who these people were. They were talking about things that was beyond the actual, what I thought VU was project related. They were talking about the structure of the program, and they were talking about fixing it. And I'll get into the slides of that later as to what that was even all about. But the chief value officer at the time, he was going on and on, very passionate guy. So I didn't know what I got into. I was a little nervous and intimidated. Then I went to the SAVE conference, the first SAVE conference of my career, and that was in 2016 in Niagara Falls, Canada. And that was an experience. Al was telling me earlier that he was supposed to go to that, but he took a better approach for his future. But that conference to me, my wife said, I'm going with you if you go, to Niagara Falls. So I went into it, and that was an overwhelming. I didn't realize bioengineering was so big. It was global. And there were all these people from around the country, and I was impressed. I was amazed, and I realized that I think this is what I want to do. Ultimately, when Frank retires. Frank retired in 2018, and I became the DVO. So I was all trained up. I competed for it, got my GS-13, and started managing the VE program over there. And I had some crazy VE studies that I went through that first couple of years. And one of them was Southwest Coastal Louisiana down at the bottom. And that one, our DVO was one of the consultants. He actually got picked out by the Office of Counsel. That's a whole nother story that I don't have time to get into, but that was kind of funny.
I already went to this.
So, yeah, so by the time I was a DVO for the first couple of years, we were getting into 2021. Well, I had this one big civil works project, West Shore Lake Pontchartrain. And I had planned with the project manager, this has to be broken up into 3 VE studies. So we executed the task orders. We had 2 of the VE studies already signed up and ready to go in May. And then March 15th of 2020 came, COVID, everybody was sent home. Suddenly we had to do everything virtual. Nobody knew what to do. So the reason why I was talking about this project is it's one of the best civil works projects that I conducted VE on. And we had to scramble and do virtual studies, and no one had ever done that. So the 3 VE studies that we did, St. James Parish, pump stations, and levees and flood walls. So a little bit about the project. If you know something about the Gulf of Mexico, where New Orleans is, and the area to the west of New Orleans, that's Laplace, Louisiana. So yes, thanks, Al. So if there's just a southerly flow, not just a hurricane or a tropical storm, if there's just a southerly flow of air pushing water that piles up against the shore, Lake Pontchartrain backs up and water can't evacuate, and it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. Ultimately, it backs up into this area, up into these neighborhoods that are along the slivers by the river, is what they call them, as the natural levees of the Mississippi River. So again, we broke this into the virtual workshops, and we did 2 of them in 2020 in May, and the third one in July of 2020. The first one we did, PM wanted us to do St. James Parish because it was the furthest to the west, and it wasn't being protected by the actual levees and flood walls. It was ancillary little flood risk management features that we had to address. So that was my favorite VE story. I could get into more details about it. Hang on, Tom. Al, you're going to have to.
Okay, so I'm Al Adelgren. I'm a Colorado native. I actually started out in mining. I was a mechanical engineer for Colorado State doing mining. My first engineering job was my summer of my junior year. After my junior year, I was supposed to be an intern. So, making copies, running the blueprints, delivering drawings around town, that kind of a thing. And then they realized that I was the only guy in the office that had heat and mass transfer and thermodynamics. So I'm running a job for installing some equipment at mine mouth at 11,000 feet elevation. So most equipment is derated to 5,000 only. So I had to derate everything to 11,000 feet. So going forward, I eventually did get my PE license. Became a certified value specialist in 1994. I need to slow down a little bit. With SAVE International, which used to be the Society of American Value Engineers. I got my professional in value management from the Institute of Value Management, which is the UK equivalent of SAVE, in January. I've been doing VE since 1992. That's when I got formally into it. But my story with VE begins before that. I completed over 450 value workshops, which is about 250 construction and 200 business systems. And we can talk about difference of that. SAVE International, member since 92, was Honors and Awards Director for 10 years, College Relations for 2 years, on the CERT board a couple of times, and now currently Executive Vice President, President-elect, going forward. So that's a little bit. So to quote David Byrne, the Talking Heads, well, how did I get here? My first VE experience was cleaning up after bad VE at Fliegerhorst Kaserne in 1988. So if there's only maybe one of you guys in here that knows where Fliegerhorst was, two, yeah, two, three. All right, yeah, north of Hanau. Okay, so I was brought in to write O&M manuals to clean up after the facilitator complex had been restored. What had happened was the contractor convinced the BAWP to do some VECPs, which were not good ideas to do. Now, some of you may remember on the old core sheets, what did it say across the top of the drawing of on the boundaries, or top or at the bottom? Value engineering pays. So that encouraged contractors to submit VECPs. It was a reminder on every single drawing sheet. I remember that going back to my first core job was in 1983. Things that they did were take like a 4-inch, 100-millimeter chill water line, neck it down to 65 millimeters, 2.5-inch. Take out the chemical treatment systems. The cooling system collapsed. It just locked up, couldn't go. And when you're looking at that time, it was the initial flight simulator for the H-64 airframe here in Europe. Now, there were sister facilities that were brought on at Illesheim and Mannheim, and I wrote those manuals too as a carryover from Fliegerhorst. But it was my introduction to VE. Is like, well, this was a bad idea. Why did they approve that? Well, there was money involved. That's why. But it wasn't well grounded. They didn't go back to what was the function, and they didn't look at performance. They just looked at cost. So my next one, I was the discipline design engineer for a nuclear laundry facility at the Hanford site up in Washington. So Hanford is where the initial reactors were for the Manhattan Project. I have kind of a little bit of a nuclear pedigree, so I worked Rocky Flats for those that are old enough to know what that was. 6 years at Rocky Flats and then a bunch of other work in the DOE complex. So I'm the discipline lead for all the mechanical and plumbing systems on this laundry facility. Now I'm on the receiving side of VE. So instead of, I'm receiving. I've had a consultant team look at my project, and they came up with a lot of great ideas. They just didn't apply to a nuclear laundry. You can't recycle water. You can't use, recover heat, use a heat wheel and recover heat because, well, you can't have cross-contamination. So we were, most of the ideas were rejected. There were a few that were accepted, but it did give me to say, hey, this is an opportunity to do something different. And I have used a washing machine like that one in the bottom right-hand corner. My grandmother was convinced I was going to lose my arm in it, but I never got my hands near the wringer. I was just that smart enough to not stick a finger in place when it would grab me. So anyways, it was a plant that was kind of like this one. This is an industrial laundry from Alsco, which does a lot of uniform stuff, hotels on that. So that was my second encounter with VE. Well, third if you count the drawing sheets that said value engineering pays. So my wildest story, and I jump around a little bit. I was going to Afghanistan to run a double workshop on 2 battalion-sized compounds, one for Afghan National Army and the other for the Afghan National Police, different parts of the country. But there was weather issues, so I got hung up in Dubai for 2 extra days. Like the quality of my hotel kind of changed as day to day. It was a really nice Crown Plaza, the old Crown Plaza, and then the hotel that was over by the Russian embassy that I think it doubled as a problem. So when I get there, after having spent 12 hours at the airport waiting for a flight that never would occur, got over there. Security guy manager comes out. He's wearing a shirt with a hotel logo on it. It's helping me get my gear. Goes. His first question was, "You want a lady in your room?" And I go, "No, I don't think my wife would approve of that." So his response was, "Well, do you want 2 ladies in your room?" And I said, "No, I think I'll pass." But it was a pretty dodgy. It was pretty dodgy. The cafe was Cafe Doom. BHOOM. That was the name of the cafe in that hotel. And it was kind of a harbinger of how the rest of the week was going to go. So I finally get to Kabul. Now, here's where the fun part is, part of the fun. I had been paying attention to the weather that was going on there. It was going to be cold and snowy and foggy. Okay. So I was going to wear a different coat. But then I was coming to Germany because I was working with a different with a contractor, ECC, Echo. I was with them at the time. So I was coming here for meetings and it was going to be rainy. Well, rain in February, you know, that's kind of pretty much expected. So I went to my two-part Columbia coat, which was bright yellow. So I'm the only guy in country that's wearing a yellow coat. The only guy in country that's not wearing dingy brown, gray, or blue, you know, whatever. Here I am, giant yellow guy at this Target. So, and this was at the same time when all the protests were going on about the Quran burning incident, which that photo, which was taken by the BBC, right behind the wall that's on the left side of the photo was where our office was at the Green Village compound. So when I'm trying to run this workshop, all of my team is all these project and program managers that from in country. They'd been waiting for me for 2 days to get to Dubai because from Dubai to Kabul because I'm stuck. I was happy that they waited because of if you know Kabul as far as the airport, the approach is, but you're approaching into the mountainside where it slows up. So you're coming in, and every year during the winter they lose 1 or 2 aircraft because they don't see the ground in the fog, and they just kind of miss. So, anyways, I was happy to not do that. It also made it interesting because we did a touch and go in Tehran. So as an American, I'm not supposed to be there, yet here I am. Because we were flying, I was flying whatever the airline was. I don't remember what it was. So while I'm running the workshop, all of a sudden everybody's phones light off. I'm like, well, what's going on? And our program manager, the senior program manager in country, he was a Marine, he was EOD, he had been an embassy guard, he had been in a lot of different places, he had crazy stories from Iraq, and he blanches and he says that the compound's being attacked. So we're on a second floor building with only one.
Value engineering.
We have an open mic somewhere, please. And so we had to shut down the workshop, and the instruction was go put your body armor on, go hang out at your pillow. Well, because I arrived 2 days late, I did not have my plate carrier yet. Everyone else, they've got their body armor, they've got helmets, they've got plate carriers and all that. And there's me in my bright yellow coat, waiting for the gate to be breached, which it didn't get breached, but there was a lot of casualties. So anyways, the explosion, that was a fuel truck, just the opposite of from our office wall. So that was the kind of the wild, that's the abbreviated version of the wild story.
That's how good, that's how important VE is.
And we went right back to
Risk
the
your
workshop.
life, you know.
So as soon as the attack ended there, because the mob moved down onto another place, we went right back to the workshop. So my favorite story, one of my favorite stories, is a few years ago for the village of Los Lunas, which is south of Albuquerque. They're looking to put in a new 4-lane connector that goes from the interstate, goes across the Rio Grande into the area that's being developed. They've got rapid growth down there. A lot of businesses constructed down there, now new housing developments. But the highway would back up tremendously. You can see the middle yellow arrow here. That's where everyone would cross. So this was the new connector here. So it's going to be 4 miles long, 4 lanes wide. The budget when we started VE, the current working estimate was almost $230 million. Problem was, they only had $100 million earmarked for the project. So how are you going to get there? It was originally programmed to be done sequentially in linear packages. Problem with that is it doesn't meet the federal highways requirement for a complete facility. Because in order to get get to A to B, it had to be a complete facility. You just can't do these interim stops along the way. So the value team, this was a fun value team too. It was huge. We had like 23 people, which was phenomenal. We had 5 structural engineers. We set up our own structures department, and they had their own mini network at the end of the conference room when they were working on the bridges. We reconfigured this thing as an end-to-end first phase, and then widen in subsequent phases as need be. So we're crossing the Rio Grande River. We've got the Bosque has a pretty wide drainage. You can see this green here. It's really wide through here. This was what we were going through and spanning. And during flood season, this would come up, well, it would come up into the trees during high water. We were going past a prison. We're going past a justice center. We're going past a few other things. We got a railroad crossing to deal with, when railroads are always fun, because in the western states, they were there before the states were created. The railroads were. That's their line. We were here first. Doesn't matter. But we were able to reconfigure it into a $130 million project, which then Federal Highway said, yeah, we can give you the grant for the next 30. So that project is getting ready to break ground and start construction here pretty soon. So that one was a lot of fun. Another one that was a fun one for me, so this goes back to 16, up at Dropsco Pomorsky training area. I did this as it was design, build, delivery, contractor-led design, build. Prime contractor was the SKE, and their local partner was Varbood. I had a lot of fun working with them. It was 42 small projects bundled in one package. Had to be delivered in a 2-year period of performance. But wait, there's a problem. You can't do tree removals during migratory bird nesting. There's trying to do concrete in the wintertime along the Baltic coast. That's kind of hard to do. You have to do blankets and heating and all that. Oh, and you can't work on the operational ranges when they're scheduled. So when you look at that 2-year-long period of performance, there was only really 6 months they could do any work. So I challenged the team. Hey, how can we do this differently? Schedule is our biggest hurdle, not getting stuff there. We decided to do prefabrication of 39 of the 42 projects. It's firing positions, it's target positions, it's range buildings, it's all of that stuff. So the buildings were containerized. The firing and target positions became as precast concrete panels and slabs. Set everything in place. We used T-walls for the ammunition storage areas, precast concrete T-walls. The only 3 projects that were not prefabricated were not in places where were in places we didn't have to worry about it. So it was the tactical vehicle maintenance building and the associated warehouse, and a tank road drainage repair. We had to put in a new culvert net. But it was a place where we didn't have to worry about nesting birds net. So what happened then is the contractor was able to complete the project in just a year instead of the 2-year period of performance. And I couldn't find the award on it, but they apparently did get some kudos for that. So anyways, that was another one of my jobs. It was fun because Dansk is a really fun city for me. It was a lot of fun. Although walking from the hotel to the contractor office, it was just about a mile walk when it was snowing sideways, and I could see the stars above. That was interesting. That was just a new thing. So sidewalk was kind of slick. Anyways, I had a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun on VE. So back to you, John.
Yeah, the real important stuff, right? So what is value engineering? A lot of people get it wrong. I've had people just say, oh, well, we'll just value engineer it and get it out. Just cut it out. We don't have to build that now. So that's not what value engineering is. So I know I said we wouldn't read a slide, but I'm going to read part of it because it's very important. It's an organized study of functions to satisfy the user's needs with a quality product at the lowest life cycle cost through applied creativity. So according to Public Law 111-350, so there is a law. We didn't make this up. I'm not going to read the definition of the law or the part of it, but it is based on improving performance, reliability, quality, saving time, expanding proficiency, decreasing life cycle costs, improving safety, Core is very big on safety, and using resources effectively. Right. So what is value? That's value engineering. What is value? Value is function over resources, like a math problem. To dumb it down, it's performance, quality, maintainability, cost, time, over cost, time, and manpower. So, well, then what is function? Function, if I can't get the product, how do I get the function? Quoted by Larry D. Miles, historic figure back in around World War II, if that's not that old. So about the history of value engineering. So again, what is the value engineering history? The concept originated during World War II as a systematic approach to handling material shortages by Larry Miles. Larry Miles worked for General Electric. Now, Al, I think you have a story about Larry Miles.
So Larry Miles and another engineer volunteered to join procurement at GE in 1942. You know, war is going, US is really ramping up the deal. And so Larry was an electrical engineer and joined procurement. And the question was, how can we meet the needs? And that's where function analysis came along. And they started analyzing what was the function? What were we trying to do? So they were doing it kind of ad hoc until about 1947 when they really formalized it. And then it became a business strategy within GE, but it was kept secret. They weren't telling anybody what they were doing. So fast forward to 1957, the Navy goes, hey, what are you guys doing? Hey, we want you to teach us how to do this. So up until that time, it had been called value analysis. Where the term value engineering came around is the admiral in charge of Bureau of Ships at the time said, I don't have any budget for analysts, but I got plenty of budget for engineers. Okay, we'll call it value engineering. That's how it became VE versus VA. So
and then in advance in 1959, it was added to the ASPR, way before my time, but supposedly that's the forerunner of the FAR. DOD recognized it in 1963, and in 1964, the official VE program was launched for the Corps of Engineers. It was later, and that's the logo on the far right side that the value program often uses. If you've seen that in VE study workshops or on PowerPoint presentations or in any logos on letterhead. In 1988 and in 1993, OMB Circular A131 was issued. This further defines some of the elements of VE. And in 1996, the National Defense Authorization Act of 96 quoted, each executive agency shall establish and maintain cost-effective value engineering procedures and processes. So that sort of set everything in motion for VE. Some other things happened a little bit later than that. But when we get to what we're talking about now, what the VE program is at the Corps of Engineers now, next slide. So the recent timeline for VE really kind of picks up off of where VE went from those prior years and all through the early 2000s into 2011. But in 2014, an Inspector General audit was conducted and identified multiple failures within resourcing positions on fulfilling the OMB objectives. So Lieutenant General Bostic directed to implement those recommendations. General Simonite in 2017 wrote another one of his Seminotes, if you remember any of those. That's an example of it on the right, focusing at the executive, at the commander's level in Washington. Let's get us back on track for VE. And then in 2018, a follow-up Inspector General's audit was conducted to identify, and then they realized that about half of those corrective actions were not implemented and we still had a ways to go. So looking at, how the VE program is structured, I was presented multiple different variations of all of these public laws, the circulars, the engineering pamphlets, and the manuals and the regulations. This slide I took from the VE program's presentation that has been sent up to Washington last year It was presented to me in the value management course in Sacramento, July this year. It starts on the far left with the public law that says thou shalt do VE, right? And then it identifies it a little bit more by defining the value engineering program with OMB, the DOD. I think that's, forgot the acronym, what it stands for.
The instructions.
Instructions, there you go. Thanks for the help. And then the Army regulations, and then the engineering regulations on the right, and then that compresses down to this cute little box we have down on the bottom with ER 11-1-321 that defines what the value engineering program is for the Corps of Engineers. So I took that and I blew it up to put it in this slide. So this ER 11-1-321 was originally published in 2011, and that was sort of what we were going by as our instructions. There was a change that was made to it, and most of it was called 11-1-321 Change 1. Since I got into the VE program in 2016, there's been a push as part of those EIG inspection general reports to improve the program. And a lot of the efforts were to improve and update this ER. And I actually was funded to help be part of those little mini workshops. This new ER is going to be published hopefully this next year. It's under review, for final review. I saw the last draft and I don't expect it to change. That's what I've been told. It was dated October of 2024. So I think we've got the last thing, and that incorporates all of the engineering pamphlets throughout the corrective action process as a result of the EIG audits and the COVE policy letters. And what is a COVE policy letter? Chief Office of Value Engineering. So Jeff Hookhouse, the chief value engineer out of Washington, who started in 2009, just took the DRP like 4 months ago. So we got that going for us. But all of his letters that initiated in 2015 to define the value standard for the VE program, basically the expectations of what do you count? If you're going to say that you did VE for the Corps of Engineers, it has to meet certain regulations. And the value standard was the start of that with the first COVE letter in 2015. The COVE letters there were tons of them in 2020 that helped define how are we going to deliver the program all through the COVID years. And Corey White, the acting chief value officer right now for the program since Jeff Hookhouse has taken the value program, he has issued his first COVE letter as of about a couple months ago. And I'm not going to get into what that's all about, but this little graphic on the far right talks about these regulations, why we have to do it, where we do it, who's doing it, how do we do it, and then the supplements with the manual of practice, which hold all the guidelines, the value management report, how we manage the program, the value study report, what the studies look like, and the value report guide, which is what the reports themselves look like, and how the AEs that help conduct these VE studies have to format their reports. And we'll see some more of those results later on in the presentation. And of course, it accommodates the COVE letters.
And just a quick side note on Jeff Hookhouse. Jeff is a great guy. He's blunt. He's blunt like a sledgehammer. That's why he and I get along great, because we're honest with each other. And Corey's a great guy. I worked with Corey on the certification board for a few years. Corey is a great successor for Jeff. And Jeff has done a lot to take the program from when he took it over from when Mike Holt retired. Mike was the prior co. The Corps value program has advanced much farther than where NAVFAC is. NAVFAC's program is actually kind of atrophied a little bit because all the people that were with NAVFAC retired out many years ago without any successors coming in. But the Corps has been and continues to be and is currently doing consulting work towards other agencies to help them bring their programs online. So that's my sidebar. So, all right.
So now you see the structure of the program and you know why we have to do it. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of how are we doing it at the district level as a district value officer. And I think that's the only reason why Yinka came, because he wants to know why I sent him emails sometimes about this stuff. But it's the, so to do a value management plan is to actually screen a project for value engineering. So we know what the threshold is, it's $2 million. If you Google value engineering program, you might see OMB circular, $5 million. Well, that's what OMB said, but the structure that is now the Corps of Engineers Value Program delegated some of that authority to the Chief Value Officer. He said, we're going to lower the threshold down to $2 million so we don't have to do a value engineering study for every project over $5 million. That would just be ridiculous, right? So we lowered the threshold to $2 million and delegated the authority to the DVO. That's me. So we have to screen every project over $2 million. That doesn't mean we're doing a VE study. It just means we're screening for VE. 90% of those projects are going to be between 2 and 5 million, or they're below 2 million. So we're not doing VE on the ones below 2 million. If it's 2 to 5 million, in all likelihoods, it's the types of strategies that a VMP defines are the low opportunity, means it's the finding of low opportunity for beneficial change, or it's a low opportunity scan bridge. That's the other strategy where we're not doing a VE study. A scan is when we're taking a project that is similar to what the scope is of the current project that we're trying to identify. And we can, OV study was already done on that. You know, we've done a lot of different similar projects. So let's scan back to it and see if we can get any of the ideas from that VE study to be accepted with the design team in today's project. A bridge is the same theory, but it's just scanning back to a programmatic VE study. They just have them broken down into these terms. The third common strategy is you're doing a VE workshop. So if you're going to do a VE workshop, it's best done at the 35% design. If you're dealing with the volunteer in Europe, it's an indirect project. You need to get in early because at 35%, the BAWMT has advanced their design significantly to a point where they're going to ask for more money. It's going to delay the project. I'm still new to this program, so I'm still learning the impacts of that. So we need to address those projects earlier on the timeline at 15%. So the arrow down at the bottom just sort of shows the low opportunity options to the left, and the arrow to the right, the level of effort. You've got the different VE studies. Value planning level 1, that's if you're doing a planning type level VE study. VE is not required anymore for the Corps of Engineers in planning. It used to be prior to 2017 before it was removed. But that tool is still in our toolbox. We can still do that, and it's recommended that we do. The only thing is we can't claim cost avoidance on those things because we don't have enough detail to actually validate that accepted proposals save that much money. There's abbreviated study level 2, standard study level 3. Those are the typical VE studies we do. There's a programmatic level 5 study that is more common than the other two, level 4, problem resolution, or level 5, the enterprise study, when you do a VE study on a standard design that is accepted by communities, was it the centers of expertise, right? The graphics off to the right, that's a typical standard VMP format that the OVEX, the VE program, has presented to us in various forms to help us do our job. The VMP doesn't have to be in this form. It could be a memo, just has to be a documentation of what that VE strategy is, which is a coordination between the DVO and the PM and PDT. Next slide.
A quick side note, on the threshold, Department of Interior Bureau of Reclamation, their threshold for doing a value study is $500,000. So they do that on repair jobs for like a dam or a powerhouse. They start at 500,000, but they do them as internal teams. They have their own cadre of facilitators in-house. They will go out to consultants when it gets larger, but so that puts a little context. And the size of a workshop on like the abbreviated and the standard, it's minimum of 3 days for a workshop. It's 3 to 5 days, 24 to 40 hours. We can do longer. I've done longer. I've had 2-week long workshops.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. And I've had them, well, we can get creative with agendas. So, all right.
I haven't been on 2 week long workshops yet, but I have recently just been on a workshop that should have been more than 40 hours because we didn't have enough time to get to where we really wanted to get. And I feel like we had to cut it short. It's hard to make that decision up front. You need to just pick it and choose it, but it's not the DVO's decision alone. DVO decision with PM, maybe the PET, maybe even the sponsors or your customer. Anyway, so what is expected in some of the VE results? So formal VE is not cost cutting, scope reduction, or design QC review. Al, I'm going to let you finish this one.
Okay. So we will look at cost. That's part of what VE is supposed to do. But we'll also identify betterments in the design because it's the end of it is about value improvement. How do we make this project better? We will identify if there's something that just doesn't seem right on the design, that just it doesn't make sense. That in the core vocabulary, it's called a quality review item. I don't like using that term, but that's just me. And it's not scope reduction. So we're not doing cost cutting and scope reduction. That's what I call the hammer and axe approach, the contractor approach. We beat down our subs and we cleave off part of the project. We want to do that. We want to give as much project as we can within this budget. But it is systematic, it's formulaic, and it goes back again to this ratio. What is the function versus resources? What is it worth versus the cost? So how can we do that? And yeah, this graphic is kind of busy. So if we increase the benefit and keep the cost the same, we're improving value. If we're increasing benefit with a minor cost increase, we're improving value. Any combination of those, we're looking at how do we improve value. That's the target here is improve, value improvement. So what are the expected results? So we've got the value team is typically independent of the design team. They may be from the same design firm, but they're independent of the design. So you get a second set of eyes looking at the project, so you're getting fresh ideas. In theory, you are. You're identifying potential construction cost avoidances, potential life cycle cost reductions, also potential risk mitigation items. When I'm running a workshop, if there hasn't been a CSRA done, a cost schedule risk analysis already done for that project, I'll run a qualitative risk register because it helps the team understand what function is, and we also get creative ideas from there. So design suggestions or QR items, those are things that the value team has noted that you might want to take a look at this because something doesn't seem quite right here, or there's an opportunity here, but it's not a big value versus what we've identified, or these are potential enhancements that we just didn't have time to investigate because we only got 24, 32, or 40 hours, like John was saying. There's workshops that could easily span. The ones that I have done that were 2-week long, they were chemical munitions demilitarization campuses, Aberdeen and Newport. One was HD mustard agent, and the other was VX nerve agent. Those were 2-week long workshops because they're complex projects, multi facilities. You got complex chemistry going on, plus all the infrastructure that goes along with it. So that's why those end up being so long. Places like the Lake City Army ammunition plant, well, there's a different problem there. You've got restricted schedules. So you can only get plant engineers for basically six and a half hours a day. How do you get a 40-hour workshop then? Well, you have to go to eight days. All right. And of course, the qualifier at the bottom, results may vary by user. So vary by project timing, facilitator, value team. You can have 2 value teams looking at the same project. They'll come up with completely different ideas. Why? Because each of us has our own unique experiences. Now, I started out in mining, then I went to hospital construction, the Evans Army Hospital at Fort Carson. That was that was actually my second hospital. I did the expansion of the old VA in Denver. Then I went to nuclear munitions. So I went mining to healthcare to nuclear munitions. I've been all over the place. I look like the poster child for ADD. All right. So timing, it can be done pretty much any time during the project development cycle. The key is, are you too busy to actually stop and take a pause and improve? So there's always a chance, an opportunity for improvement. I love this graphic because I laugh every time I see it. So, yeah.
You mentioned earlier when you're going through the process, John, that if there's a similar scope, you can apply, something you worked on in past projects. So that's a current project and then helps speed things along.
Scan strategy.
Yeah. And then you just mentioned that, aside from complex projects, they take multiple weeks or a week. For the most part, it's 72 to 48 hours. So we're saying that you guys have enough strategies for pretty much everything to kind of get to the value in that amount of time, regardless of the project side, for the complex projects.
Yeah, there is. I mean, they're different. That's why there's different tools that the Corps of Engineers Value Program has set up and established for us to do. Now, we can go off script from what is required. We can still do VE to customize the problem of a specific project. And that's where there was a VE study that we did in New Orleans District on the path above the levee in Jefferson Parish because the path was failing. We did it in like a day and a half, 2 days. By the definition of a VE study, that didn't count as a VE study for the value program. We still conducted it because we solved some problems that then was implemented in future designs of what was actually going on. So we could do anything we want. It's using the VE 6-step job plan or the 8-step. And Al's going to get into some of those tools. You use the same process to get to your conclusion. You can do it in a compressed schedule, but the VE program alone recognizes the abbreviated and the standard. So if you don't fit in that mold, then it's not really a VE study. You don't get credit. It can be a VE study, just not credit. Answer the question?
Yeah, no, I guess I'm thinking about it like, why don't we just look for everything?
We can.
Yeah.
Going back to VE in planning, and I've even talked to Travis McPherson about maybe a couple of projects coming up that we may choose to do VE on some of those larger projects and forego doing it more in construction just to claim cost avoidance, because we might make more of an impact earlier in the planning stage to set the project up for success instead of wait for problems to come along. So.
Yeah, and we can talk about different applications and that, and this is where I'm going to go completely off script.
Okay.
So one that was done last year and a half ago was the joik at Ramstein. So old guy story time now. The way that the scope of work was set up. So, and I'm going to toss names. Black and Beach had the design. They had only 2 days to do the design charrette, but we had a 5-day value workshop. So I talked with the acting DVO, who's part of OVEX. OVEX is the Office of Value Excellence, which is at Louisville. Expertise, yeah. Either way, it worked for me.
Yeah,
so,
I know, it's still the same.
Because there's some Corey and Q are excellent guys, in my opinion. So anyway, we reconfigured that instead of having a 5-day value workshop, a 2-day design charrette, we moved 2 days off of the VE and put them on the design charrette. So we had a 4-day value-based design charrette and a 3-day workshop later on, VE workshop. Carl was part of that effort. And we were able to come up with, so we helped get this project, which is a complex one, 2-story underground, hemp shielded facility that can take a near strike. How do you deal with all of that stuff and keep the adjoining facility online while you build this one and maintain access. Oh, by the way, we got a 450 vehicle parking deck we got to put in somewhere. How do we do that? So the value workshop looked at a bunch of that stuff, and we were applying it during the planning, during the design charrette, and then had a VE workshop later on. And we still came up with some really good stuff during the value workshop. So yeah, we'll get into some more of that. So so the timing, typically a value study, it's focused. We're looking at a total of 5-6 weeks engagement, and that starts before the design review package is released. So this is assuming we're looking at a 35% package. So you get the value team lined up, and you're going to want to have a bunch of wizened. I'll use a term of one of my youngers threw that one at me. Wizened engineers and architects, planners that have experience. Typically, you want to have a value team that has like 15 or more years of experience, because then they've seen stuff. Now, what I personally like to have at least 1 or 2 interns in there, because they're willing to ask questions that more experienced engineers or designers have forgotten why they do things.
Or they've been trained not to ask those questions.
Yeah, and whereas an intern, you get get a young engineer and they ask questions. I love having interns on highway jobs because they challenge the structure engineers. So why are we doing this? Why do we do it this way? Why are we not doing it that way? So yeah, we're having a great time there. So all right, so we're running on time, down on time. Okay, so this graphic shows that the best opportunity for doing for doing a workshop is early on. So the earlier you do it in the design development, the greater the impact you can have on that design. But you want to get it in between planning and 35%, because that's when you have the best opportunity. As you get it later, you can still do things to the project. So here's when you can do it in a project. You can do it from systems engineering, business systems at the very beginning, all of that, that's kind of enterprise level stuff. Or you can do it from master planning, 35%, it's highlighted here. I've done it during construction, using the value methodology to develop a project recovery plan when a key subcontractors fail. And I think I got a story on that later on. Well, if we have
But I want to stress that at conceptual design, 35%, it's required for the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
If you've got a project over 2 million and you've identified you're going to do a V study, that's when you're doing.
Okay. So we talked about the job plan. There's the 8 phases of the job plan, and each phase builds on the preceding one. So going from left to right. And in the loop in the middle, that's the 6 phases that are within a value workshop itself. So there's the planning phase that occurs before, and then implementation that occurs afterwards. Me as a value facilitator, I'm rarely involved in implementation phase, because I've prepared a report and then that's handed off and it goes to the agency PM and it goes to the design PM for further evaluation, implementation of those ideas. And then John's job is to audit that. All right, so again, this summarizes the prior slide. It's a more readable as far as what the phases are. Okay, so during the planning phase, we identify what the project is, where's the workshop going to be? Is it going to be on site? Is it going to be remote? Is it going to be hybrid? Is it going to be virtual only? Who are going to be the team members? Personally, me, I like to be near site and do a project site visit if I can, because I'm an old hard hat. Mechanical contractor, general contractor, I've run labor crews and that. I'm happy. I'm just happy. I'd be happy in the field. Give me a leaky trailer, hard hat, and boots. I'm okay. And then we determine who the team members need to be, and that's always based upon the project. So when we look at, we do modeling in advance. If we have a good working estimate, the team leader should prepare a parental cost model. And with that, we focus in on the top 80%. So 80% of the cost is driven by the minority of the project. And in this case, it kind of splits out as being shown that the cost elements for about half cover about 80%. So that's what that arrow indicates, is where that breakpoint is. You see the blue on the right or the left and the red on or green I'm kind of colorblind, so that makes a challenge at times. We want to focus on the high value bars. That's where, as the facilitator, my job is to keep shepherding the value team in that direction. All right, so during the information phase, that's when the users, the program manager, the design PM, they give a briefing to the value team and explain what's going on in the project. What are the constraints? What's the design approach? What's the targeted? What are we trying to do? And that's when the value team will ask questions. Hey, did you look at this risk or that? And so that's why sometimes we will do a risk register if there hasn't been a CSRA. And if my firm's involved, generally there's a CSRA. They're done together. So we can talk about that separate. All right. So function analysis. This is where we get down into the nitty gritty.
This is the key important part of what differentiates value engineering from standard design.
And from every other cost reduction philosophy that's out there. Function analysis key. So what is the function? So what is the function of this presentation? It's to convey information. What is the function of this meeting room? Control environment. We've got, what is the function of the door? Is to restrict access, control access. They're all intended, everything has a function, and then they have secondary functions. So how that looks is we have a function diagram, we have higher order functions, basic, secondary, required secondary, enabling, activity. Activities are just like, activity would be implied pigment. So when you're scribbling out notes. A common higher order function related to a MILCON project would be to maintain readiness. Why do we do maintenance facility? Ultimately is to maintain readiness. We have equipment ready to go when it's needed. Why do we do barracks facilities and dormitories? To ensure that the personnel are well rested when they need to. It contributes towards maintain readiness. So that is one of the highest order functions that we can see on a MILCON project. So a function diagram, and this is a dormitory renovation that was for the Navy up in Connecticut. This shows what a function diagram looks like. And I'm a disciple of Charlie, by the way, who was the guy that created this diagramming technique with when he was with Sperry Rand or Rand Corporation. And it shows how the function box is linked together. And at the top, I call them corrals, but they're design objectives, all the time functions, and project goals. And what goes in those corrals, the corrals vary from size to size on each project. And then the highlighted boxes, those are the functions that the value team selected for brainstorming. So we had 3 that were identified here, and there was 1 more that we sometimes use, which is managed construction. So we get into things like contractor staging and phasing and so on. Anyway, all right, so function analysis. Everyone's heard the term form follows function. If we don't have form following function, we end up with a cost runaway. A good example of that was the Denver VA hospital. It went from a program $400 million. By the time it was completed, it was $1.76 billion. Because they let the form dictate, not the function. Creative phase, that's when you get into and you look at alternative ideas. And this is when the rules get thrown away initially.
It's the fun part.
Oh, this is a
The
gap.
fun part of a workshop.
Yeah, but I'm a nerd because I like this part. This is my favorite part.
That's the headache part. But,
Yeah. And when I was going through the big domestic drama, I used a function diagram to help me master a plan how I was going to migrate from a 2,800 square foot house to a 1,700 square foot house and make sure that my ex received all the stuff that she was supposed to get and get her name off of everything that she was supposed to be on. So yeah, it's a great tool. It's an incredible tool. So what I like about this is, so what is that rail car doing? What is the function of that rail car? No, what's the function? Active verb and measurable noun. It's not transporting passengers, it's spanning an obstacle. because it's not transporting anything. It's stationary. So it's when it's spanning an obstacle to allow people to access the other side.
Its prior function was transport passengers.
What's that? Probably, yeah.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, you don't want to know, yeah. Sometimes
Would you walk across that?
sometimes you don't want to look in the kitchen, so. All right, so, the creative phase, and Einstein had a lot of great quotes on creativity, but it's basically it's intelligence having fun. You're having fun. So during the evaluation phase, that's when you start putting the constraints back on and you knock down these ideas. Personally, when I'm running a workshop, I set a minimum threshold of creative ideas of 100. That's a debate that I could have with other facilitators. They'll say, oh, 40 is good. Some have done, they're happy if they get 10. No, I want 100 for a reason. I want to challenge the value team to come up with as many ideas as they can. And if you don't, you end up with like, here's where the contractor, kind of like on Fliegerhorst, the contractor dictated the solution. So the bridge here is just a plank wide. It's kind of like when you got chilled water lines like this, when you need to cool a big thermally intensive computer room. Okay, so development phase, that's where we take the surviving ideas. So we've got 100 ideas, we'll knock them down to 20, 25 maybe. There's the Pareto rule in there, principle. And we flesh these out with narratives, with sketches, with calculations, order of magnitude estimates for capital construction, maybe life cycle. And, we determined, hey, well, maybe it's a great idea initially, but when we start looking at life cycle, it's going to be too much to heat. And this is what I think is really cool about how the CORE's value program has changed over the years. Yeah, is that it used to be that we would do whatever it took to reduce the cost on a project and to help with whatever the operational costs were, because that was a different bucket of money. And so that's what I always took umbrage with as a facilitator, because I'm like, hey, that's my money. I'm a taxpayer. We need to look at it from a life cycle standpoint. So very early on, that was important for me. All right, so we prepare, and this is examples from reports, and these are just a couple that I've happened to do over here. And my firm works with all the majors. We don't hold, but we do an outbrief to the project stakeholders, the designer of record team, and so on. I will prepare a draft and a final report. Draft is the report is right after the workshop. The final report includes whatever the decisions are on all the value recommendations, the proposals. And then there's elements within that get handed over to John or the DVOs, and that's like the first reporting system. So
the value engineering reporting system, what it is on the right side, you see a fact sheet, which is what is part of the VE standard for the Corps of Engineers. And this is basically the deliverable that goes to the executive office, because the commander doesn't have time to read the full report, right? So everything is dumbed down and put in this one sheet. Give me the facts. I just want to know what the results are. This little table to the left is the VERS data that comes out of that report. How many ideas were accepted or rejected? What's the costs? And then I've got to take this information and I put it into the value engineering reporting system, the VERS database. That's next. So what is VERS? Value engineering reporting system. Yeah, we have a database. The DVO, has access to it. This is where I put all the results of the VE reports. So that's what the page looks like. This next feature here is what a project page looks like with all the data you put in. It's connected to P2, our scheduling system, so it pulls up those milestones. This part in the center, which I have enlarged to the right, that's where I put in that VERS entry stuff that comes from the reports, okay? And then down here, right down here, you see some of these green dots, and then you see this information down here. This is the information I have to input so that I can claim cost avoidance on that project. And these things down in the lower area on the lower right here, you see 4 entries. Those are 4 entries of, say, $4.5 million per fiscal year. And that goes up and rolls up to our overall claim savings, which is reported out in the metrics, which is next.
Which that goes back to
So
headquarters.
we
Yeah.
have command key performance, the indicator, the KPI, which is KPI 17 is the value engineering program, which was reported at the division up to the headquarters level. We have metrics for the districts. The key metrics that we look at quarterly and report up is the program compliance and the program coverage. But the program compliance, that's the key. If you have a project that's non-compliant, that means you are potentially violating the law. You awarded a contract that doesn't have proper VE documentation. In most cases, with the DVOs in place, it's because there's a data issue with the P2 schedules or something like that. And these snapshots down at the bottom is with Power BI, shows what those metrics look like. And I'm in that every day now that it's September, the end of the fiscal year. Then there's the RMICP program. If something goes wrong, we have to file an RMICP report at the end of the year. We did at the end of the year. This year, we're on target not to have to do that. Last year, we did it. And I was proud to do it because new to the Europe district, I wanted to report what part of the process is needed attention at the headquarters level and at the executive office, and what needed improvement for us to improve the program this year. And I think we've made progress. So this last district is, what is the VE program at the Corps of Engineers? This is the graphic that I stole from the value program because I thought it was really cool. They're proud of it, so I thought that you guys need to see it. The enterprise value program is on the outside, goes inside with the dark color, value community of practice, black. Then the office of value expertise in blue. They're our support group that is funded by headquarters. And the value tax that Jason asked me, how are we going to pay for that this year? Because our programs, RM office doesn't want to use it for overhead anymore. That's up to every district, how they're going to pay that 50 grand. And that's just what it is this year. Inside that is the value management group. That's new. That's a value working group to talk about issues and problem solve. Then you've got the RVOs, the regional value officers that support the districts. So that's at the regional level. And then inside is us, DVOs. There's only one DVO per district, and I'm the Europe district. So if you have any questions, Therese is going to give you my email, and I'll reply if I can. So.
Okay.
When we send the slides out,
Right.
we'll add a slide that has your contact information.
So that's the end of the formal. We kind of crashed the end of it there.
I
But,
think we went over
just a little bit.
3
but
minutes.
But we do want to open it up for questions.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Anyone online that has a question?
I'll let people online. Anybody online has the question, you raise your hand.
About anybody in the room?
The
Carl?
life cycle costs, we used to do that, use e-compact for that. My understanding is that has changed.
I'm not sure.
not within the workshop.
Huh?
We didn't use eContact inside the workshop.
That's
That's a BLCC, and that's a different thing.
Yeah, the BLCC. What-
Yeah. That's a building life cycle cost analysis pack that comes out of NIST.
So that has replaced e-compact.
I don't know. But I've never run eContact inside of a value workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm used to it.
Well, you haven't used it on my workshops with me, so you're using my templates. So, but eContact, I know there's been some changes to that, but that's when you have formal economic analysis being done. All right.
I have a question, and it was triggered by you talking about some of your favorite stories. And, does each service have their own program, their own process? Would it benefit the tri-services to kind of have a common program? You mentioned that NAFPAC had kind
So
of fallen away and,
NAVFAC does kind of have a program, but they reference standards that have changed many years ago, but they still included in the SAES. The Corps does value for the Air Force.
in Europe, but not everywhere.
Yes, globally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've done Air Force projects in the States like at Seymour Johnson or at Warren Robins and at Kirtland and so on. And it's all their core projects for the Air Force.
Okay, but the Air Force also has contracts that they issue work
They-
under.
But the projects are managed by the Corps. If they're doing anything that's separate, then they don't have a value program on it
Okay.
unless they ask for it. So that's where the Corps is, with all federal agencies, the Corps is most advanced with its value program.
Right.
So
That's what I was about
Well,
to clarify is that
That's clear.
there,
Yeah.
there are, I think some of the other military programs do have Bureau of Reclamation.
that's interior.
Right,
Yeah,
so they do have some form of value program and they do try to follow. I don't know what all those processes are. The VE program for the Corps of Engineers, there's no other district, I mean, there's no other organization like what we have. Ours is strengthened. And I think
absolutely.
even
Yeah.
from what I understand, Jeff Hookhouse, who just took the DRP, may have stepped away as the Chief Value Officer for the Corps of Engineers. But I think as a private sector employee, he is going to look to, and I think he's already being reached out to help other organizations build their own internal value programs.
Based on the.
It doesn't have to, I don't see them going as far as the Corps has gone. But, there may be some changes coming up.
I gave him the contact at National Guard Bureau
That's right.
because they want to set up their own value program. So I said, hey, you need to talk to Jeff. Jeff, hey, you need to call Bill.
Now, on a separate thing, if nobody has a lot of questions, I wanted to clarify that $2 million threshold. It's not just for construction projects. That's for all procurements
Yes.
with the Corps of Engineers. So it could
No,
be,
that's defense.
it's defense.
Yeah.
You're right, you're right. It could be $2 million worth of toilet paper.
Yep.
And what the VE program at the Corps does not have is, now that procurement goes against our cost avoidance metric because it's the PD squared, I guess, data that is reported, all the contract awards over 2 million go against our cost avoidance metric of 3% of all those contracts that were awarded. So, but there is no P2 number. There's no way for us to identify when and where and who awarded that project, that contract, but it's all procurement. So there are GIS projects, AE task orders, things that exceed 2 million. And I have to document, if I know about it, I do the best I can to document why we're not doing VE on that. Now the value program at OVEX level, they did an enterprise value program, programmatic VE study on AE contracts. And they are allowing all of us districts to scan back to that or bridge back to that to say, these are some of the ideas that came out of it. There may be opportunities for us at the district level if we have AE task orders or contracts that are going to exceed it. Maybe we can look at some of these ideas, but in most cases, we're just documenting a low opportunity for further action. But we do. I mean, if it's got a P2 number and it's $2.5 million, it's going to be non-compliant for VE, and we have to have a milestone in that schedule. So it's challenging for me at the end of the year. And,
Any other questions? These guys can stick around for a little while, and don't forget that we're having a
Yes,
drawing.
for all of you that came in later, drop your business card in the hat for a chance to get a piece of a box of candy from Colorado.
The finest
Yeah.
chocolate toffee ever.
It is the best almond toffee you can find. So
That just leaves it for me to say thank you very much to both of you for coming, and I really appreciate appreciate the
Thank you
time
very
that
much.
you've taken out of your schedules.
Thank you.
Presented with our post coin.
That's cool.
Very rare,
Thank you.
very few of those around. Up to now.
Cool.
Again, thanks a lot. It was Al that reached out to us on his way through Europe to put this presentation on. Really appreciate it. Very
Cool.
entertaining, very informative. I think most of us have got some experience of BE studies. I think we're much wiser now in terms of what we should be looking for, and also John for updating us on the Europe District program. I know certainly from our company that we have done EV possibly slightly differently, BE slightly differently. Something that Craig and I will take back to our colleagues to explain. This is the program now, and we may need to adapt the way we do things in the future. So
This is the way the program is supposed to have been for 30 years. So
exactly. Also, thanks Jason and folks from the Corps of Engineers. Great to see you at our meetings. I think this is probably the first meeting in many a time where we've had as many people in the room as online. So we do all our meetings as hybrid. We have recordings. We have the presentation will be on YouTube. Slides will be on our website. Again, a great resource for people that want to catch up. New people coming to the district to see what's going on. So again, with that, thanks very much, everybody. And
There's some table here.
just one note.